Hello friends, today we are going to start with functions and because there had been a lot of demand with respect to functions, requirement of videos related to functions in Java, specifically using the IDE called BlueJ. We have been learning that, especially that is the requirement in ICSE where we need to, build up functions. Now, if you go by the definition of a function is basically block containing executable lines of code. So it's a block containing executable lines of code. Having said that, it's not, giving a proper justice to this, definition of function. When we are telling it's a block containing executable lines of code, what is a block? A block is anything in Java within a group of statements within the opening and closing braces, those curly brackets. That's a block. So it's a group of statements within that opening and closing bracket. But having said that is not good enough. The reason behind this is, what is the reason behind this? The reason behind this is basically that's a very technical kind of a definition. If you want to understand the real essence of function, it isn't that. No, let me tell you something. What is programming? Programming, by now you have understood that you are giving a set of instructions which, when executed, performs a particular task. Now, when you give these instructions and when the number of instructions are huge, very big, it's difficult for us to maintain. So what we are going to do is we are going to break it into smaller segments, small segments, and each of these segments are going to perform a particular task. So breaking a huge task into smaller segments, okay, and each of these segments are going to perform a particular task. Now once we break it into smaller tasks, it is easier for us to maintain. Moreover, not just that, we have the capability of reusability of a certain group of code. What do I mean by that? Say for example, you have a book consisting of a single chapter. So you are learning a single chapter right from page number one, the first page, to say the book consists of 500 pages. So all 500 refers to one particular chapter. Now it will be a boring and it will be difficult for us to maintain also. In which particular part we are studying, it is difficult for us to refer to that also. However, if the book is divided into smaller segments, we call it chapters, and we have an index wherein we can jump into a particular chapter, won't it be easier? And moreover, we'll also have the capability of reading a particular chapter, a numerous number of times. Any number of times we'll be able to go through a particular chapter. Any number of times we'll be able to go through that chapter. Whenever we require it, we'll look at the index, refer to the page number, and get into that particular chapter. Similarly, I want to go to another chapter. Again, we look at the index, refer to that page number, and get into that chapter. So this process is going to continue for creating a function.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to create a function inside BlueJ. Directly, I want to do an implementation. What I'm going to do, this implementation is a very simple one. It doesn't do much. Just how does this function, execute, or how do we execute these functions? It is only related to that. Nothing much is being done over here, and neither am I going to make a complex function over here. So I'll begin with new class. So just click on new class. So we get the usual BlueJ create new class window. So I'm going to give a name for the class. You can give any name to this. Nothing much. I just randomly typed out few letters. Click on OK. And yeah, so it has created a class, and BlueJ creates a class which basically is correct, absolutely, but does nothing basically. So we'll get into this. I'm just going to highlight the entire thing, and I'm going to remove this because I don't require that. So let's start with this. We'll have a class named my class. Okay, and then inside this we are going to have a function static void. I'll tell you the meaning of this keyword static slowly. We are not going to jump at the very beginning. What is the meaning of it? Just we are simply creating a function, and let the name of the function be function1. So that's an identifier for the function. You can give any name, provided it's a proper identifier. I believe all of you remember that BlueJ, or Java rather, has a certain rule for different type of identifiers. So you should be following those rules while naming the functions, those identifier rules. So here we have a function named function1, and here what I'm going to do is I'm going to display a message system.out.println. You have done such functions several times, but in your program so far, whatever you have learned, at least I believe that you have done the entire program that involves a single function. That means everything you incorporated in that particular function. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a program which will involve more than one function. So at least two functions where we are going to, at least understand how to, write the entire code over here. So say for example, I display the message first over here, and let me close this. I'll have one more function, static void. See, this is what I was trying to tell you. That is, we can divide a program into smaller tasks. So this entire program, that is my class, is a huge task. Inside that, we have broken it into two tasks. The first one is function one, that is one task, and function two is another task. Where the function one, the first task, is supposed to display the message first, and the second function is going to display the message second, say for example. So these are the two tasks or two chapters inside this entire big book called my class. So you can imagine it this way. And I'm going to display the message second over here. So now see, this is my complete program. Let me click on the compile button for compilation. So yeah, there is no syntax error at least. So we are going to close this. Now right click over here. I'm just going on for a right click, and you can see this time the names of both the functions are being displayed. That is function one as well as function two. And let me tell you something. It is possible to execute either of these functions. It is not necessary, you have to execute a particular function. So that's the facility which BlueJ gives you. That is, you can execute either of these functions. So you can execute function one also, you can execute function two also. So you can execute function one. Say I click on function one, so it's going to display first. You can see this is the terminal window where the function, where the message first gets displayed. Similarly, I can click on the function two. So here you can see I executed the second function and it's going to display second, the message second. So you see, it's pretty simple. How do we execute functions? But still, I'm yet to tell you the real essence of functions. We are going to slowly understand this, how it works. Okay, so I'll be using my digital board for discussion from now onwards. It's easier for me to explain you. So you can see over here, we are going to discuss about functions. Functions are also called methods. Please remember these names. They are mostly used interchangeably. And now, what we are going to do is we are going to get back to the program which we had written, which we had typed in BlueJ. So we are going to once again get back to that. So class, my class. This is what I had written. And then I had written static void function one. That was the name of the first function. And here I displayed the message system dot out dot println. I displayed the message first. I believe all of you remember that. And then I also wrote static void function 2, where I displayed the message second. So system.out.println. I displayed the message second. So this is what you had already seen. Now see, there is nothing much over here. You could execute either of these functions. This is what we had seen in BlueJ. We could execute either function 1 or we could execute function 2. Either of these two functions we could execute. So this is what you have already seen. Now, getting back to what I was trying to tell over here is, suppose, say for example, what if the situation arises where from function 2, I need to invoke or call the function 1. You see, that's the beauty of having a function. I can invoke or call a function. I can call one function from another function. So you can imagine it to be, certainly I am in, suppose I'm getting back to the example which I had given. Suppose I'm in book, I am reading a book which where I'm in chapter 5. and I want to switch over to chapter 6. I can easily switch over to chapter 6. You know that the usual method of referring to the index and then getting over there. So there'll be a particular method by which we'll be able to refer to another chapter. We can jump into another chapter and from there jump into another chapter. So this process can also be done when we use functions. From one function, it is possible to get into another function. So let us imagine a situation where what we are going to do is, after printing the message second, I'm talking about the function 2. After printing the message second, I want to jump or switch over to function 1. That means I want to execute all the statements given inside function 1. So one method is you right click on that BlueJ icon, click on the function 2 function, and it's going to display the word second over there. Close the terminal window, again get back to the program, right click over there and click on function 1 to display the message first. So instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invoke inside function 2 the function 1 function. So how do I do that? I simply write over here function 1. See how I'm calling the function. This is the technique for invocation or calling a function. Calling or invoking a function. So here what I'm doing is I'm invoking the function named function 1 from function 2. Now you see, don't think that in this way the function 1 loses its entire importance. No, function 1 will remain as it is. That is, if you right click and try to execute the function 1 function by clicking on that particular function 1 command, you will simply get the same message, that is first, that is still there. However, when it comes to executing function 2, when you right click over there and in those options, menu options, you get function 2. When you click over there, the first thing it does is it displays whatever statement is written over there. So what is written over there? System.out.println second. So first the word second gets displayed. So this is the output which we are going to get when function 2 gets executed. So when function 2 gets executed, which I'm very putting a stress upon this, when function 2 gets executed, the first output you're going to get is the word second. After that, what happens? After that, you're invoking the function named function 1. So what happens is the entire control gets transferred out here. And after getting transferred out here, what is the first thing we come across? System.out.println, the word first. So it's going to display the word first. And that's not the end of it. Don't think, oh, okay, only that much. No, it will get back to the next line where you have called. Now, that means it will get back to the next line. That means out here. Where I had called over here function 1. So it will get back to the next line. Next line means after this particular line. And since there is no more line after this, the program execution stops. So this is the technique which I wanted to tell you. This is the technique of invoking one function inside another function or calling one function inside another function. Whenever we require it, we'll call one function inside another. So this will help me with the process of reusability. I talked at the very onset of this chapter, I talked about something called reusability. Now, what on earth is reusability? Where the same code can be reused again and again, where the same set of instructions can be used again and again. Instead of retyping the entire thing, what I can do is I can keep it inside a function and I can call this particular function or invoke this function repeatedly to perform that particular task repeatedly. I'll give you now, we'll get into more, technical details about this. Okay, suppose, say for example, I'll just clear the screen. Now, every variable that you declare inside a function doesn't mean that you are only going to display messages. No, you will have a complete set of program. You can write any valid Java code can be written inside a function. That means we can always have variables over there. So here, what we are going to do is, we are going to have variables inside a function. And please remember, if you declare variables inside the function, its scope is limited or its life is limited only within that function. That means as long as the function is getting executed, it remains in the memory. And once you exit or you come out of the function, that particular memory do not exist anymore. I believe you can understand whatever I'm trying to tell. Here, as long as the function is getting executed, the variable exists in the memory. Once you come out of the function, it has no existence. And please remember, the variables declared within one function has nothing to do with variables declared in another function. So you can have a version of int a inside one of the function, and you can have INTA, another variable INTA, which is inside another function. This was not possible with a single function so far, whatever you have learned. There you could not have multiple variables with the same name. Here we can have multiple variables with the same name, provided we are declaring both these variables in two separate functions, because they have nothing to do with each other. They will occupy separate memory locations altogether. I'll give you an example what I'm trying to tell. See over here, this is a very interesting concept. So getting back to this, say we have my class, and we have static void. Okay, let the name of the function be fun. I'm trying to make it smaller now. Okay. And then we have a variable out here, int, say a equal to 20. Nothing much. This is a local variable. Its scope is only limited within the function named fun. Point to be noted over here. Okay. And then I display this variable, the value of this variable. So println e. Now that's it. And now you see, I'm going to declare one more function, static void. Say this time I give the name call. And here again, I'm going to declare another variable with the same name. I said it has nothing to do with each other. Both will occupy separate memory locations because they are declared or defined in two different functions. So you need not worry. Suppose here I have 15. And the first thing what we do is we display the value of a. So system.out.println e. So I'm displaying the value of a. Along with that, what I'm going to do is I'm also going to invoke or call the function named fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the function named fun. So this is what I'm going to do. And once again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to display the value of a. I'm going to display the value of a. Now look at this functions. Now what is going to happen? Suppose I invoke the call function. So we'll see the output when call is executed. That is, the call function is executed. Whenever the call function is executed, we are going to see the output. Okay, this is the function. Now see what is going to happen. Once again, let me reiterate what I said before. All variables that you declare within a function, its scope is limited within that function only. It has no existence outside it. So please keep that in mind. Now, getting back to whatever I was trying to tell, let's see what happens when the call function is invoked. Of course, when you execute the fun function, it's still going to display 20. So don't worry about it. We are going to worry only about the second function where we are invoking another function, because that is what is important to us. Now look at this. I have a variable declared over here, int a equal to 15. We'll call it local variable. Local in the sense it's local to the function named call. And I think it's a very valid word to be specified for a variable. We call it local in the sense that its scope is only limited within this function. It has a scope. That means its validity remains within this function only. It has no existence outside. So here a, the variable a, which I have declared out here, let me mark it with blue color. This has a scope limited only within this call function. It has nothing to do outside this particular function. Okay. Now let us get back to what we were trying to tell. So int a equal to 15, system.out.println a. So definitely it's going to print 15. There is nothing much. Now you see what I'm doing is I'm invoking the function named fun. I'm calling the function named fun. So what will happen? The entire control gets transferred out here. Okay, the entire control gets transferred out here. You see how it's getting transferred. And here I have another instance of the variable a. So this a has nothing to do with the a which I have marked with blue. So this particular a, whose scope is limited within the function named fun, is being initialized with the value 20. And here what I do is I'm writing system.out.println a. So what is the first thing we are going to get? We are going to get 20 out here, no doubt regarding it, because here the value of a is 20. And this a has nothing to do with this particular a. Now what will happen? After a function gets executed, so far whatever we have learned, we learned that it gets back to the next line wherever you have invoked the function. So what is the next line? The next line you can see out here. So from here, it'll get back to the next line. So this is the next line. And in the next line, what do you see? is written out here, system.out.println A. Again, I'm displaying the value of A. However, in this particular statement, when I display the value of A, what do you think is the value of A which is going to get displayed? What do you think is the value which is going to get displayed? It's going to display 15. It's going to display 15. The reason behind this is, here in this function named call, the variable A still has the value 15. That's the reason why. It still has the value 15. That's the reason why we are going to still see the value 15. We are not going to get 20. Why? We did not get 20 because once I exited from the function named fun, the variable A, which was initialized with 20, gets completely wiped out of the memory. So don't get into a wrong thinking of after the fun function is called, the value of A becomes 20, and therefore when I print over here this A, it's going to display 20. No, once you come out of the function, the variable which was declared inside the fun function, it gets completely wiped out of the memory. You need not worry about it. And out here, since the value of A, which was marked with blue color, is still 15, it's still going to display 15. So this is what a local variable is. A variable whose scope is limited within that particular function only. Irrespective of the name, it doesn't matter. Its scope is limited within that function only. It has no existence outside that function. Okay, I believe you can understand what I'm trying to tell. Now, at this time, I'm going to do something where I'm going to show you an example which is much more practical in nature. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to write a small code where I'll develop a function which is going to add two numbers, and these two numbers which it is going to add, the values I'm going to pass it from outside that function. That is, you can imagine from the call function, I'm going to pass two values to this function which is going to add these two numbers and display the result. So this is what I'm going to do. A very simple example we are going to do. So here you see, we'll begin with class, my class. And you see, we'll start with this static void sum. And I'll tell you the meaning. We are going to take two parameters. These are called parameters. To be very precise, these are called formal parameters. Okay, those are technical terms. I'll come across that later. Don't worry so much now. I'm taking a variable C, which is again local to this function named sum. And here what I do is I'm going to write C equal to A plus B. And along with that, I'm going to display the value of C. So system.out.println, I'm going to display the value of C. I'll give a proper message, sum equal to C. Okay. Now look at this. Static void call. Or we can give mean, doesn't matter. Any name you can give. In BlueJ, you have this facility of giving any name. Okay. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to call the sum function this way, sum 5, 6. And let's see what happens. Again, I'll call sum 7, 8. Now look at this. Instead of giving you the technical details, there is something called formal parameter, there is something called actual parameter. Forget about that. Suppose we start executing the main function. So output when main is executed. So output when main is executed, we are going to check that out. So what I'm doing is I'm invoking the function or calling the function named sum. So what happens? The entire control gets transferred out here. Now you see, this time something very interesting I do. I am writing 5, 6, and I believe you can understand I'm basically passing values to these functions, and these are called parameters or arguments. So what I'm trying to do out here is I'm passing the value 5 to the variable A, and I'm passing the value 6 to variable B. So 5 is going to get into the variable A, and 6 is going to get into the variable B. So A will be 5 and B will be 6. Now look at this, int C equal to 5 plus 6. So C equal to 5 plus 6, what happens this time? C equal to 5 plus 6, it will be 11. So system.out.println sum equal to C. So what do you think it's going to display? It's going to definitely display sum equal to 11. So this is what it is going to display. Now that's not the end of it. That is not the end of it. Now what happens? It will get back to the next line. I already said this before, that after a function gets executed, it will get back to the next line wherever you have invoked the function. So it will get back to the next line. And in the next line, what do you find? Again, I have invoked the function named sum. And this time, I'm passing the values 7 and 8. So you see, these arguments, these are called arguments or parameters. I'm passing the values. So 7, I believe you understand, to which variable will it go? Yes, definitely. You're thinking right. It will get into the variable A, and 8 will go get into the variable B. So it is always one-to-one relationship. The first value goes to the first variable. The second value goes to the second variable. So always one-to-one relationship. So 7 to A and 8 to B. So C equal to 7 plus 8, that is 15. So system.out.println sum equal to C. So what do you think it's going to print? Sum equal to 15. You see how simple it is. So these are, now we'll get into the technical details. So these are called parameters or arguments. Let's be very clear with this. Parameters or arguments. Now these are basically used to take values from outside the functions. Why on earth do we require parameters? We require parameters to take values from outside the function. You see, in the previous program, I was initializing that particular variable A with 15 or 20 inside the function itself. But look at this. Here, what I'm going to do is the value of A and B, I'm taking it from outside the function. I'm not initializing it inside this function. So what I'm doing is I'm going to take it in the form of parameters or arguments. And interestingly, every variable that you write in parameter or argument should be declared separately. It's not like, declaration int a comma b. It is not that. So how do we do? Each variable should be declared separately, because you cannot have multiple lines of parameters or arguments. It is one single line. So it's a good idea that we have every variable declared separately, because b may be float type also, isn't it? So the variable a may be int and b may be float. So if I write int a comma b, like the way we normally declare variables, now b will already become int. So that is why each variables in a parameter list is declared separately. Okay, so this is first thing. And next, any other variable that you require, you can declare it inside. So intc is some other variable which we require. We have declared it inside. So only two variables I've given over here as parameters. So that means it is understood that we can pass only two values to this function. I cannot write, something like this, sum 5. No, this is not done, because since there are two parameters over here, I need to pass two values to this function. It is understood. And now here intc is a local variable. Even a and b are also local variable. It is local to the sum function. Once you exit from the function, it has no existence. The same thing holds true out here. But intc is, what is the speciality of this intc? Even this is a local variable. The speciality is the value of c will be initialized inside this function, whereas the parameters are always initialized from outside the function, where 5 and 6 is being passed to a and b in the first situation, and next time 7 and 8 is being passed over here. And c is simply some other variable which is used for performing a certain calculation, which is kept inside this, because it doesn't require to have some value from outside the function environment. In that case, I need to put it in the parameter list. But since I do not require it, I'm going to keep it over here only inside the function itself, and then I'm displaying the value of c. So it's going to display the sum of whatever value is being passed to a and b. I believe you can understand this. So simple. This is invocation of a function as well as passing some values to a function. And technically, these are called the values which are passing, that is 5, 6 in the first case, and in the second case 7 and 8, they are technically called actual parameters. Actual parameters or arguments. And the one which accepts the actual parameters are called formal parameters. See how simple? So actual parameters are the actual values that you are passing, and formal parameters are the recipient of those values. You can imagine it to be like that. Now, you see, the actual parameters need not be a constant, which I've written over here. I'll give you an example to illustrate. It may again be a variable. I'll give you an example. You see, I'll just erase a bit of this. Now, see, something very interesting what I'm going to do. And that we have two variables, int a equal to 20, comma b equal to 30. And what I do is I'm going to invoke the function named sum a comma b. This is perfectly valid. That means it need not be a constant. It may be a variable which will obviously have some value. So I am passing 20 to A and 30 to B. Some people have a confusion. Should I write the same name? That is A and B only, because the formal parameter names are also A and B. Nothing to do. I already said this. This is local to the function name sum, and this is local to the function name main. Where on earth this A, it needs to be having the same name. It may have any other name. Even you can pass sum B comma A. It still means the same thing. I can always write it sum B comma A. So in this case, what does it mean? 30 goes to the variable A and 20 goes to the variable B. So absolutely fine. I can also have altogether different name. That is int x equal to 15 and y equal to 20, and I can pass even that sum x comma y. So please don't get confused that the variable name should also be same. It has nothing to do with that, and neither there is any kind of confusion convention where it is required to have the same variable name. You can have any goddamn variable name, it doesn't matter. Please remember, the first variable's value goes to the first formal parameter variable, the second value goes to the second formal parameter variable. So this is what happens. It doesn't matter what value you're passing. Now next, the values may be, if this is the case, if we are able to pass values from variables to a function, we can also input and pass values to a function. There is no issues at all with that. So what I'm going to do is this x and y, which I initialized with 15 and 20. Previous to this, I had initialized a and b with 20 and 30. Let me input these values and then pass it to the sum function for adding those two numbers. So what we can do? Is we can perform a very simple task. I'll just remove this. So we'll begin initially with import. I believe all of you remember. Suppose I am going to use the scanner class for inputting. Util dot asterisk, and here I'm going to create a scanner object. I'm going to create a scanner object. Next, what am I going to do? I'm going to declare two variables, int x and y. Now look at this. I'm going to print a message, system.out.println. Enter two numbers, because these are those two numbers which I'm going to add, taken from the user. Enter two numbers. So in the main, I am entering two numbers. Say x is equal to a scanner object dot next int. Similarly, y equal to scanner object dot next int. So two numbers I've taken as input, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to invoke this function. So how do I do that? I'll call the function name sum, because the name of the function is sum, and I'm going to pass x and y. So x goes to variable a and y goes to variable b. That's it. This is how we do this. So when you execute the main, so first thing it will display is enter two numbers. That's the first message it's going to display. After displaying that message, those two numbers are being accepted into variables x and y, and then sum x comma y. So x will go to a, y will go to b, and c equal to a plus b. Those two numbers which are passed from x and y will get added, and it's going to get displayed. So ultimately, it will display the value of the added result of x and y. So this is what is going to show you. So you see how simple it is. From one function, we are able to call another function. And it is not necessary from this particular function which you are seeing over here, the sum function can call again another function. You can have several such functions. And it is not necessary that I am giving you an example related to only two functions. They may have multiple functions. They may have more than two functions, three functions, four functions. Any function can call any other function, doesn't matter. But don't call the function by itself. In that case, that is called recursion, and it should follow some other technique over there. We'll come across that later also. But currently, at least understand that we can have multiple functions, and a function can invoke another function by simply using a name. And remember, if it has parameters, you need to pass values for its parameters. So if it has integer parameters, you need to pass integer parameters. If you have floating point parameters, So it should have a floating point parameter. And please remember, it will always have a one-to-one relationship. The first parameter will go to the first formal parameter. The second actual parameter will go to the second formal parameter. So this is how it goes. And you can pass both variables or constants when it comes to actual parameters to the formal parameters. So that was a hell lot of difference between formal parameter and actual parameter. In other words, formal parameters are the recipients and actual parameters are the givers. They are going to pass some values. Now, what I'm going to do is something more interesting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to accept two values, add those two numbers. So same thing, just like the sum function which we had created out here. I'm going to take two numbers just like this using formal parameters, add those two numbers, and instead of displaying the sum inside the function named sum, I'm going to display the sum inside the function named main. Okay, so instead of displaying the sum inside the function named sum, I'm going to display it in the main. I believe you can understand what I'm trying to tell away. Now, how do we do that? I'll just clear up a bit because this is looking quite dirty. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add these two numbers. Okay, two numbers which I'm going to pass to that function. Find their sum, and instead of displaying the sum inside the function, I'm going to display it inside the main. So here you see, I'm going to write the complete program over here. Import java.util.star. I'll be using the scanner object for accepting two values from the user. Static void sum and A and B. Now notice this very carefully. And C, and inside this C equal to A plus B, I'm going to add these two numbers, and I'm not going to display it over here. I'm going to get back to the second function where I'm going to invoke this. Let me name it as main. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a scanner object. I'm going to create a scanner object. Let me take two variables, X and Y. Let me accept two values. And so all those stuff's the same thing. I'm just rewriting it for clarity. Enter two numbers, the usual stuff, and I'm going to accept two values. And remember, I could have taken A and B also. It doesn't matter. I believe you remember. It has nothing to do with the formal parameter A and B. So X and Y, I'm going to take it as the input. I'm going to invoke the function named sum x comma y. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to display the value of C. So system.out.println C. And here is the main ending and here is the class ending. Now let us see how this is working. So enter two numbers. The first thing is it's going to accept two values, and then sum x comma y. X will go to the variable A and y will get into the variable B. Now I've taken a local variable. Remember, a local variable is always local. That means local in the sense that its scope is limited within the function wherever you have declared. So int C's scope is limited within the sum function. So C equal to A plus B. So it's going to add those two numbers. And once you come out, does the variable C exist? Once you come out, I already said all local variables inside a function exist only within the function. That is, as long as the function is getting executed, it will remain in the memory. So once you come out of the function, it is going to get wiped out from the memory. So once you come out of the function, where does it come? It comes to the next line wherever you have invoked the function. In the next line, what do we find? System.out.println C. Is there something called C out here? Nothing, because C already got wiped out of the memory. So this will show you an error because there is nothing called C out here in this particular function. Actually, what BlueJ is going to think is there is a variable C out here inside the main function. So it will tell you that the variable C is not, this particular identifier is not declared. How come I'm going to print it? So that means a variable which is local to a function, you cannot use it elsewhere. because its scope is limited within that only. So you cannot write this way. So what is the solution to this problem? The solution is we are going to return the calculated value back to the function wherever we are calling. So I'll tell you what we do. We'll write over here return C. Hence the gap. I've kept it over there. Now return C. What is the meaning of this? Return C means it's going to return the value of C. Now, please remember something. Since the function is returning a value, this time we cannot have the static void. We should write the data type of the value which is being returned. Here, what is the variable you are returning? C, and what is its data type? Int. So you should write int. This is called the return type of the function. So int, this particular int which you have written over here, it is called the return type of the function. That means this particular function is going to return a value which is of integer or int type, in other words. So now the program is perfectly valid. Had C been a float type number, suppose the same program, if I ask you, to return the average of the numbers which are being passed over there, naturally C would have been float or double. If it is float, the return type of the function, you have to write float over there. If it is double, you have to write double. If it is character, write char. If it is string, write string. This is how the entire thing works. Now, getting back to whatever I was trying to tell over here. Now, this time, look at the invocation technique. Okay, I'll just erase this part because this is erroneous. Okay, from here onwards, I'm going to write it out here so that you can understand very easily. Now, when I call this function sum x comma y, I'm passing the values. The x and y are those two values which are entered by the user. Now, x will go to a and y will get inside the variable b. That is obvious. And c equal to, it's going to add those x and y. That is a and b currently. And return c. So return c doesn't mean the variable c will get returned. It will go flow over. It will go flowing out there. No, nothing of that sort. The value will get returned. Where? To the place where it was called. Say, for example, let's assume the value of x is 5 and the value of y is 6. So 5 gets into the variable a and 6 gets into the variable b. So c equal to 5 plus 6, c equal to 5 plus 6 means c will be 11, right? So return c is going to return 11. So it's going to return 11. I'll just write in a different color so that you do not get confused. So return, it's going to return 11. Now, when you're returning this 11, where does it get returned? It gets returned to the place wherever you have called. Where did you call it? Obviously, you had called it over here. So 11 comes over here. So you can imagine inside the memory, this entire sum x comma y gets substituted with the value 11. So if that is the case, I require a variable to hold that particular value. Yes or no? So instead of doing that, so what we are going to do is, instead of doing it this way, I'm going to take, although this is perfectly valid, but my purpose is not solved. I'm unable to get the answer. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take a variable, say z, where I'm going to hold the value which is being passed from the function. So here, I'll take a variable, say z, and I write z equal to. So now you see, this time, once again, I'm going to interpret the entire thing. 5 goes to variable a and 6 goes to variable b. 5 plus 6, that is 11, and 11 is going to get returned. It's because I've written return 11. So where will it return? It will return to the place wherever it is invoked. So what happens? Z will be how much? Z will be obviously 11. So now, if I write system.out.println z, what do you think it's going to display? Obviously, it's going to display 11. So this is how a function returns a value. This is how a function returns a value. It's going to return the value 11. After the function gets invoked, it's going to return the value 11. This will come inside the place wherever it is invoked. So where does it come? This entire sum x comma y. Imagine this entire thing gets replaced with the value 11. So z will be 11. So print z. So it's going to display 11. I believe you can understand this. Now a few technical stuff related to the return statement. Now return statement, you have already seen that it is used to return a value from a function. And when I say that it is used to return a value from that function, mark my words, it can return a single value only. It cannot return multiple values. It can only return, in Java, at least in Java, you can return just a single value from a function. You cannot have multiple values which is being returned. Although it is possible for us to return an array, that is another concept. But at least we cannot return more than one value. So you cannot, in other words, you cannot have more than one return statement. Don't think that you can write below this one more return statement returning something else. No, that's not possible. Once you come across this return statement, it returns a value. So you see the return command or statement has two jobs to be done. It not only returns a value, it also exits from the function. So if you have any statement after this, say system.out.print or anything of that sort, this particular statement will be considered to be unreachable. You cannot reach that particular statement altogether. So the return statement is not only going to return a value, it's also going to exit from that particular function. So this is what is going to happen. Okay, so I believe you can understand whatever I'm trying to tell over here. And next, which I've already repeated, I already said this, I'm going to repeat that once again. That is the return type of the function. There you are going to write the data type of the variable which is being returned. And remember, if it is void, it means the function is supposed to return nothing. Although you can write return out there also, but it is return without a value. You simply write return. And the meaning of this word return means exit from the function for a void type function. Okay, so return will always exit from the function. And if you have returned some value, it's going to return that value along with exiting from the function. This is how it is going to work. So if that is the case, as we can store it into a variable, or we could have, in this particular program, we could have directly printed this way. System.out.println. I could have directly done this. Sum x comma y. I could have directly done this. Sum x comma y. So the value 11 will be coming over here and that will get displayed over here. Okay, I believe you can understand whatever I am trying to tell over there. So it is not necessary that you are going to store it. You can also, use it in an if statement for checking for something. You can always write if. Say, I'll give you an example. Suppose I want to check whether the sum which is being returned from that particular function is even or odd. So sum x comma y. So I can do that by storing it in z and checking whether the value of z is even or odd. That is one aspect of it. The other aspect is, please write sum x comma y. It's going to return the value 11. I'm going to check whether it is even or odd. That is perfectly valid. You can also do it this way, because it returns the value wherever it is invoked. Please remember, the previous to this, when the functions were not returning, what did I tell? It will get back to the next line wherever you have invoked. Since it has nothing to return, it will get back to the next line wherever you have invoked. Whereas whenever a function returns a value, it returns the value to the place wherever it is invoked. So if 5 and 6 is being passed, so 11 will be returned to the place wherever it is called. This sum x comma y will be inside the memory. It will get replaced with the number 11, and 11 modulus 2 equal to 0. It's checking whether the returned value is even or odd. So I believe you understood how functions are executed or created. This is a very simplified explanation of functions, and do practice a lot of questions from different books. You can also see my book published by Frank EMU. Over there are a lot of questions which you can refer to, or practice on those questions which are related only based on functions. The next video which I'm going to do is on functions inside a class. You must have studied in class 9 itself regarding something called characteristics and behavior. An object will have certain characteristics and behavior. Characteristics are represented by data members and or instance variables, and behavior is represented by member functions or methods. So I'm going to explain this concept, so do not miss out that particular episode. But currently this is what we are going to do about functions, and do practice a lot of questions with respect to functions. And more you practice, the better you become. It's simple as that. Anyway, thank you. Bye for now. Thank you.